delicate thing to try to mess with there if you're the Detroit Pistons. What do you think of that trade for Anthony Davis?
I would do it if I was the Pistons.
Anthony Davis is stuck in Dallas, and his career feels like it's slowly slipping away. What was meant to be a new chapter has become a dead end. Injuries piling up, pressure rising, and a contract no team wants to touch. His agent keeps asking for answers, but nothing's changing. AD looks trapped, and time's running out. Rich Paul, Anthony Davis's agent, walked straight into a meeting with the Mavericks front office and made it clear they needed answers. He asked, "Are you extending my client this summer or trading him before the deadline? Because we need clarity on what's really happening here." The Mavericks' response left everyone stunned. They told Rich, "We want to keep our options open and see how the next few weeks play out," which basically means they have no idea what to do. Someone in the room even joked that Cooper Flagg has suited up more times for Dallas than AD since he joined last year. So now the front office is just waiting, watching, and hoping something changes. And honestly, it's understandable why they're cautious. This isn't only about whether Davis can still perform. It's about whether locking up $275 million in a 33-year-old with a long injury history makes sense when the franchise is supposed to be building around Cooper Flagg. But here's where things get dicey. If Dallas doesn't extend Davis and can't find a trade partner willing to take on his contract, he could decline his $62.8 million player option in 2027 and walk away for nothing. That would mean the Mavericks traded Luka Doncic, a generational talent, for just 2 seasons of Anthony Davis barely staying healthy. That's a nightmare scenario, and it's closer to reality than people realize. And that's where the real problem with Dallas's situation begins. The real reason the trade market for Anthony Davis isn't as strong as people think has everything to do with the new NBA rules. Brian Windhorst reported that the market for AD is limited, not because teams don't want him, but because they literally can't afford him without wrecking their future flexibility. Davis still has around $120 million left on his deal, an amount that used to be manageable in the old NBA when teams would just take on the salary and figure the rest out later. Back then, winning came first, cap problems came later. But that old mindset doesn't work anymore. The new collective bargaining agreement introduced the apron system, and it's completely reshaping how teams build around stars. The second apron acts like a hard cap. If a team crosses it, they lose most of their team-building tools. No more signing trades, no combining contracts for bigger deals, no mid-level exception flexibility. It locks a franchise in place for years. Now, here's where Dallas is really in trouble. They already have over $300 million committed for next season, and those extensions for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford tighten their financial space even more. If they trade Davis for a 2026 lottery pick and matching salaries, they could easily hit that second apron, which would freeze their ability to make major moves for seasons to come. One Eastern Conference executive even said the Mavericks have to be careful what they do with AD because one bad deal could hold them back for years. The wild part? Dallas has already made moves that set them back before, but this time the risk isn't just basketball related. This is about financial structure. One wrong trade could trap the Mavericks for the entire length of Cooper Flagg's rookie contract. It's not just Dallas caught in this mess. The teams that might want Anthony Davis are facing the same financial handcuffs. One of the biggest names connected to him is the Detroit Pistons, now surprisingly the top team in the Eastern Conference. Coming into this season, everyone expected the Knicks or the Magic to finally take over the East, especially with Jason Tatum sidelined by a torn Achilles and Tyrese Halliburton going down in Game 7 of the Finals. But here we are. Detroit is running the East, and even with all that success, there are whispers that they're still open to making another big move. Think about the Houston Rockets last year. They finished second in the West and still went out and traded for Kevin Durant. So yes, Detroit's front office is ambitious, but they're also cautious. They've built a balanced roster around their young core, and taking on a $120 million contract for a 33-year-old with an injury record could destroy the chemistry they've built. The other two teams linked to Davis, the Atlanta Hawks and the Toronto Raptors, are in similar situations. Atlanta has to plan ahead for Trae Young's next extension, while Toronto is trying to stay flexible until they figure out their long-term path. The Raptors are currently sitting 5th in the East and could realistically climb to 3rd or even 2nd if their season keeps trending up. For these teams, the argument isn't about talent, it's about timing.
The Eastern Conference is wide open right now. The Bucks have fallen off, the Celtics are grinding through injuries, and that leaves teams like Toronto, Detroit, and even Atlanta with a short-term shot to make a serious run. But taking on Davis's massive deal could lock them into a future they're not ready to commit to. A Western Conference executive recently told ESPN something that cut deep.
For a guy like Anthony Davis, it's hard to justify giving him a 35% max when he's not playing heavy minutes. It's a brutal statement, but it reflects the league's new reality. Teams have become way more cautious. They're no longer throwing around massive trade packages for stars who might not be available every night. Since the new apron rules took over, front offices are moving carefully. According to Brian Windhorst, it would now take a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo, someone still in his prime, reliable and healthy, to demand a true blockbuster deal. Davis, at 32, simply doesn't carry that same trade power anymore. His reputation as one of the league's top big men is still there, but his durability issues have changed how teams view us. Now here's what's really interesting. The Mavericks are trying to get a clear picture of what they actually have in Davis. Owner Patrick Dumont has reportedly created what insiders are calling a showcase period. He's told the medical staff to be extremely careful bringing Davis back from his calf injury. No rushing, no shortcuts. Dumont wants to see AD at 100%, playing consistently before making any decision about an extension or trade. It might sound cold, but it's actually smart. Davis wants to know his future, and Rich Paul's doing his job by pushing for clarity. But Dallas is still recovering from years of impulsive decisions. They just fired their GM for exactly that reason. Dumont's not about to risk another long-term mistake that could hamper the team's future. The problem, though, is Davis's inconsistency. He'll have flashes of dominance, like when he scored 29 points against Houston on 14 of 19 shooting, and then completely vanished the next game, going 1 for 9 against OKC. You never know which version of AD is showing up, or if he's even going to suit up at all. What Dallas needs is sustained excellence, multiple weeks of health, steady numbers, and reliability on both ends of the floor. But since he arrived, Davis hasn't managed to string that together. Every time he looks ready to turn the corner, another setback hits. And what's even more concerning, some around the league are starting to question whether the so-called interest in trading for Anthony Davis actually exists at all. Here's where things take a twist, and this part changes how the whole situation should be viewed. NBA insider Brett Siegel recently raised a question that's got a lot of executives talking. Is all this reported trade interest in Anthony Davis even real? It's a fair point. Could this be Rich Paul trying to create a market for his client? Or maybe it's the Mavericks front office floating stories to make it seem like there's competition, hoping to pressure teams into offering their best pieces. Because when you look closely, every team that's been mentioned, the Pistons, Raptors, and Hawks, has something Dallas would want in return. That raises the question, is there genuine interest or just a bit of strategic media manipulation from both sides to boost Davis's value? According to Sam Amick of The Athletic, the truth might be far less dramatic than the headlines. He reported that the actual level of interest from these Eastern Conference teams remains murky, especially given Davis's injury history. Multiple league sources have expressed doubt that there's a real aggressive market for him this trade season. So while reports keep linking the Pistons, Hawks, and Raptors, insiders say no one's certain how serious any of those teams really are. The league is shifting toward building younger, deeper, faster squads under the new CBA's financial rules, and a 32-year-old big man with durability concerns doesn't fit that trend. Brett Siegel also added a key detail about timing. If a deal does happen, don't expect it anytime soon. The most likely window would be right around the trade deadline in early February, maybe the 3rd, 4th, or 5th. Unless the Mavericks get an offer that blows them away, they're not moving early.
And that's the real risk. Every extra week that passes adds more uncertainty. If Davis suffers another setback, his value could dip even further, making an already complex situation almost impossible to solve cleanly before the deadline. Let's break down the 3 most realistic outcomes for Anthony Davis and the Mavericks, and none of them are simple. Scenario 1, the extension. This is the safe but risky path. Dallas decides there's just not enough value out there in the trade. They don't want to risk AD walking away for nothing in 2027, so they go all in. 4 years, $275 million. That means Davis stays in Dallas, paired up with Cooper Flagg as the core of the franchise. The front office hopes that if Davis can stay healthy, that combo could still lead to something special. But the issue is that $76 million number sitting at the end of the deal when Davis is 37 years old. That's a huge commitment for a player with a long injury history. If his body doesn't hold up, that contract could weigh down Dallas for years, making it almost impossible to build a real contender around Flag. They'd essentially be betting that AD ages better than anyone expects him to, and based on his past, that's a massive gamble. Scenario 2, the trade. In this path, Dallas bites the bullet and trades him before the February 6th deadline. Maybe they find a team desperate enough to take on his contract, someone looking for a short-term push, and they get back a mix of young players and draft picks that match Cooper Flag's timeline. It would be a clean reset for the Mavericks, a chance to rebuild from the ground up. But the problem? The market for Davis just isn't there. Teams are more cautious than ever under the new CBA. Nobody wants to risk years of cap flexibility on a player who might not stay healthy. That means Dallas could end up with a disappointing return for someone who was supposed to justify trading away Luka Doncic. And if that happens, it would be a serious blow to their reputation around the league. Scenario 3, the waiting game. The Mavericks take no action. They let Davis play out the season. No trade, no extension, just time. The hope is that by summer his value rebounds. Maybe he finishes strong, stays healthy, and suddenly more teams are interested once cap space opens up. It's a patient approach, but it's risky because every month that goes by, Davis gets older. Every injury or missed game lowers his value a little more. If he suffers another major setback before summer, Dallas could be trapped, either handing him that massive extension out of fear of losing him or watching him walk for nothing. Either way, the Mavericks are cornered. No matter which scenario they choose, they're facing tough odds, and the clock is ticking louder every single week. None of these outcomes are good, and that's the harsh truth about the corner Dallas has backed itself into. At this point, the Mavericks aren't choosing between success and failure. They're just trying to find the least bad option. And when you look at the full picture, it's hard not to see how deeply this mess runs. It's not even just about Nico Harrison's decisions, though yeah, his moves clearly pushed the franchise into this chaos. It's about how the NBA's new financial system has completely reshaped the way teams operate. There was a time, not long ago, when you could trade for a superstar like Anthony Davis and worry about the cap later. Winning came first, accounting second. Teams used to take those big swings because they believed star power would fix everything eventually. But that era is over. The new apron rules have changed the entire mindset of the league. One scout told Brian Windhorst, "The aprons are causing people to think and act differently." But there will always be teams that decide to strike while the iron's hot. It's an even bigger risk-reward calculation than it's ever been. And that's exactly what this situation comes down to: risk and reward. For the Pistons, it's about whether the reward of a finals push is worth risking their future flexibility by taking on Davis's massive contract. For the Accent, it's deciding if adding him is worth giving up parts of their young core, especially when there's no guarantee he'll even be healthy for the playoffs. And for the Mavericks, it's asking whether extending Davis for $275 million is worth potentially trapping themselves financially right when Cooper Flag could be ready to lead a contender. Nobody in these front offices has a clear answer, and that uncertainty is what makes this whole situation so tense. When Rich Paul walked out of that meeting, he didn't leave with clarity, because Dallas doesn't have any. The truth is, no one really does. Every option comes with serious consequences, and nobody wants to be the one who makes the wrong call first. So what do you think? Is Anthony Davis really trapped in Dallas, or can he still turn things around before it's too late? Could the Mavericks find a way out of this mess, or are they already too deep in it? I really want to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. I'm thankful for every single one. Thanks a ton for watching. If you like this story, hit that like button, share it around, and don't forget to subscribe to Ball Stories for more deep dives into the wild side of basketball. Stick around, there's another video waiting that dives even deeper into the next twist. See you there. Peace.